Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We like to get into some pretty thought-provoking stuff on this show, and today is no different.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So we're going to be diving into this idea of, well, kind of the connection between obedience and blessings. And I know, it sounds kind of,
Like a Sunday school lesson.
a little bit,
Mhm.
right? But stick with us on this one, because the source material we're looking at today really dives deep, and it all starts with this really, uh, I guess you could say, interesting story about a wedding.
Oh yeah, the wedding at Cana.
Exactly. The wedding at Cana. Have you ever been to a wedding where, like, something goes terribly wrong?
Well, I mean, I haven't personally witnessed it,
Me neither, thankfully.
but you always hear those stories about, the cake falling over
Oh,
or
yeah. Someone gets a little too,
a little too enthusiastic at the open bar.
right. But this is a different kind of wedding disaster. So picture this. A wedding feast, everyone's celebrating, having a good time, and then boom, they realize they're out of wine.
What a nightmare. I mean, talk about awkward.
Right. Total party foul.
Yeah.
And, back then, that was a pretty big deal, like a major social faux pas. So Mary, Jesus' mother, she sees what's happening, she sees the problem, and she goes up to the servants and tells them, hey, whatever Jesus tells you to do, just do it. Okay.
That's some serious faith right there.
It really is, especially because, like, at this point, Jesus hasn't really even performed any public miracles, right? So it's not like they're used to just, like, seeing him do these incredible things. And what's really interesting is, like, his response to Mary, it's not exactly like a, yes, mom, right away, mom sort of thing.
It's almost like he's hesitant.
Yeah, almost like, woman, what does this have to do with me?
So you can totally see why he might, push back a little, right? It's a big ask. But Mary, she's not giving up. She just turns to the servants and says, okay, listen to him. Whatever he says, just do it.
It really makes you think about her character, right? Like, what does that tell us about Mary's faith?
Total trust,
Yeah.
even when it doesn't make sense. And I mean, what he asks them to do, it's not exactly an obvious solution to the problem.
It's not. So get this. He tells them to fill these 6 huge, like massive stone water pots with water. Like, hello, they need wine, not a water refill station.
And they actually do it. That's the craziest part.
I know. They just obey. And I think we all know what happens next. The water turns into wine. And not just any wine. It's like the best wine the guests have ever tasted.
It's a pretty wild story, but you're right. It's not just about the wine. It's about surrendering to something, bigger than ourselves, even when we don't get it, even when it doesn't make sense.
And that idea of those kind of illogical instructions leading to blessings, it really makes me think about another story from the source. What about Moses and the Israelites?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Moses, just like Mary, he was constantly urging the Israelites to trust in God, to obey his commands. And he's really specific about it, too. It's not just like, hey, obey and good things will happen. He really spells it out.
Yeah, he paints this really vivid picture, right? Like, what kind of blessings are they going to get?
He's talking about families flourishing, all their efforts being fruitful. Like, imagine that. Everything you do just works out.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Their enemies would be defeated, they would prosper and become the most, powerful nation around.
That's a pretty good sales pitch.
It is. And the part that really struck me in all of this is that the source, it emphasizes how these principles, they haven't changed, they haven't gone away.
Oh, yeah, that's a big point.
God's character, it's unchanging. And that connection between obedience and those blessings, it's just as powerful today, as it was back then.
Absolutely. So, okay, if these principles are timeless, what's that mean for us, right? Like,
Yeah.
here we are in the 21st century. What are we supposed to do with this?
Makes you think, right? I mean, we all want certain things out of life, don't we? Peace, success, some sense of purpose. But what if, and this is a big what if the key to those things isn't us striving in our own strength, but rather aligning ourselves with something bigger, something beyond ourselves?
Okay, so let me ask you this. Have you ever had, and I'm sure you have you ever had an experience where you were told to do something that just seemed completely illogical, but you went ahead and did it anyway?
Yeah, I'm sure I have. I mean, I think we've all been there, right? Like where something just doesn't make sense to our human brain, but there's this little voice or this feeling that says, just do it. And that's where trust comes in.
Exactly. It's that leap of faith. And, the source puts it this way. It says, it is safer to believe and act on his word than to depend on our understanding of life's issues.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful because it's so true, isn't it? Our limited human perspective, it can't always grasp the bigger picture.
No, absolutely not. And sometimes sometimes we just have to take that leap of faith, right? Even when it feels like we're walking into, I don't know, the complete unknown.
It's scary, but it can also be exhilarating.
Totally. And, speaking of unexpected outcomes, I love how the source talks about this. It uses this amazing image of blessings overtaking us.
That's a cool way to put it, overtaking, not just trickling in, but actually pursuing us.
Yeah, like blessings are chasing us down. So what do you think that looks like, in real life? If those blessings could actually overtake you, like, what would that look like?
That's a good question. I think it speaks to that abundance that we can experience when we are in alignment with that higher purpose. It's not about, like you said, it's not about us chasing blessings. It's about us becoming, I don't know, almost like a magnet for them. And that happens through that trust and obedience.
I love that. A magnet for blessings. So, okay, last question, big one. If blessings could overtake you this year, what would that look like for you? What goals are you working towards? What area of your life might just need a little dose of that trust, and that obedience to unlock that potential?
Yeah.
And I'm asking myself this too.
That's a great question for all of us to think about. I mean, this whole idea of obedience, it's a lifelong journey, isn't it? This deep dive. It's just the beginning.
It really is. We've only just scratched the surface here. But you know what? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and just see what incredible blessings unfold when you dare to trust and obey. You might be surprised. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Thanks for listening.